Hi guys, I've got yet another video for you. Season 14 Jungle Bible, in other words, all you need to know to survive Seasons 14 Jungle. We're gonna cover Void Grubs' new Shelly, Baron and terrain changes, as well as some insights about possible new tactics and champion pools. Let's start with the Void Grubs. The Void Grubs is a new multi-camp slash objective taking place of the first Herald. They spawn at 5 minutes and respawn individually 4 minutes after being killed. Void Grubs camp despawns at 30 minutes 45 on their own or 30 minutes 55 when in combat. The Grubs do spawn 4 Void Mites every 12 seconds in the combat. After killing a Void Grub, all the remaining Grubs gain a fat 25% max and 25% missing HP shield that decays over 10 seconds, which might deter the team from taking all 3 Grubs at once. Killing a Grub grants you and your team a stack of Hunger of the Void that grants true damage to the towers at a rate of 4 for melee, 3 for range, true damage per stack per half a second. In human language, 8 true damage per second for melee and 6 true damage per second for ranged. After acquiring 5 or 6 stacks of Hunger of the Void, you will be spawning respectively 1 or 2 Void Mites if in close proximity to the enemy towers. Let's look at the new Herald aka Shelly. From now on, you will be able to mount Summoned Herald by right-clicking her. After mounting, right-click in the direction to turn Shelly around and start the charge. The charge lasts up to 14 seconds, the speed ramps up from 150 to 600 movement speed over 5 seconds, increased by 75% when moving towards the enemy structures. Any enemies hit by the charge will take 250 true damage and be knocked airborne. Hey, Yasuo mains! If Shelly hits the enemy structure, she will deal 2000 true damage and spawn 5 plus number of the Hunger of the Void stacks, Void Mites, that will help you with the siege. Did I mention that she also gives you a fat shield as well? Big change to remember? Now Herald grants all gold gained to all the champions who assisted in killing her, not the person that summoned the Shelly. Shelly spawns now automatically when the Eye of the Herald timer ends or spawns in the fountain if the carrier was dead. This change is so big, it will save you many times. Now, jungle camp changes. After 20 minutes of the game, when the Baron spawns, the jungle buffs become Voidborn, getting 30% more HP and increased durability. Once killed, they grant the buff to the whole team and are not transferred to the opposite team once the owner is killed. Similar to above, after 20 minutes of the game, the Scuttle Crab becomes Voidborn as well. When slain, it sends a massive Scryer Bloom effect, leaving all the enemy vision at 1 HP. Huge! Let's check the Baron changes together. Baron stays unchanged for the most part and is dealt with as usual. Now, there are 3 versions of the Baron. Hunting, aka Horn Baron, that spawns lightnings every now and then, dealing 15% current HP. All-Seeing, aka Eye Baron, that sends rifts towards 2 furthest enemies fighting him, dealing around 150 damage. Territorial, aka Classic Baron, that grabs the champions in a cone, pulls them closer and deals 75 magic damage to all units pulled. The Horn Baron Pit stays unchanged. Yeah, very original, Riot. The base Baron Pit now grows a small wall in the middle of the river, and the All-Seeing Baron grows 2 long walls, creating sort of a tunnel for the Baron fight. A very interesting one. Now, let's dive into the basics of terrain and jungle changes. Top lane becomes ungankable or less likely to be ganked due to the small pixel bush in the center of the river. Check it every time. Mid lane becomes a much safer place, especially for the immobile mages. 20% more time to react will reduce the amount of deaths significantly. There is a new gank angle that leads directly to the first tower. Need to keep an eye on this one. Bot side becomes much more open and prone to ganks. Entirely new gank approach becomes available. Now there are 3 bushes to take into consideration when warding. ADC and support mains, brace yourselves. You're in for a wild ride this season. Jungle terrain, especially the new blue buff wall, becomes much more open and prone to invades. It's going to be much easier to try and smite steal the buff from the enemy jungler. There is a whole new moon-shaped bush that will be stuffed with wards all the time. Remember to check it while passing nearby. Infernal terrain now spawns infernal cinders that provide a small burst of movement speed on pickup and 0.3 temporary ability haste per stack. You will lose some of the stacks upon death. 5 stacks can be maintained throughout the grey screen though. The damage dealt to non-epic jungle monsters is heavily reduced from 42 to 25%. This is an indirect buff to tanks or slow clearing junglers. Jungle pet damage is increased, scales with level, and is now capped versus epic monsters based on level. And now, let's have a chat about new possible tactics/timers to keep in mind. As the ganks are much more difficult to pull off in Season 14, remember to keep up your tempo. Focus on objectives, don't take unnecessary fights, take only the fights that lead to securing the objectives. Changes to the terrain are going to keep the top and mid laners much happier now. The addition of Void Grubs is going to force more fights around the Baron Pit around 5 minutes. The Void Grubs deliver a big boost to the sieging power, aiding in taking the plates easier, and we all love the gold, don't we? Many supports will leave their lanes around minute 4 and gank mid lane, secure the vision around Baron Pit, or gank top lane. Depending on your team composition, it might be wise to drop the Void Grubs objective and focus on killing the now supportless ADC, invading the enemy bot side jungle, or securing the first Drake instead. Especially Ocean, Wind and Hextech Drakes are worth your while, as they provide most valuable stats. Securing the new Voidborn Skull Crab, especially around objectives, will be paramount. One well-timed crab can destroy the entire vision of the enemy team, most likely securing the objectives for you. Due to the lethality being more lethal again, you can expect more AD assassins being played either in mid or jungle. This shift will intuitively draw more tanks into the meta as a natural counter. Mage junglers will get some great new items that will allow them to farm and scale even harder, but the assassins will be able to deal with them in a blink of an eye due to the lethality buffs and then get away at 3 times speed of sounds. Opportunity. Bullshit. It looks like that's all I have for you today, guys. As always, I try to condense it as much as possible for you to save you some precious time. Like the video if you find it valuable. What are you waiting for? Go back to the Summoner's Rift and win yourself some more games. See you around, guys.